nature, enjoyer, and consciousness. So I go to, yes, 13th chapter. Can you can you go to the next slide? Okay. So we saw in the first 6 chapters, first 6 chapters on how Karma Yoga leads to Bhakti, right? We about Karma Yoga and then Jnana Yoga, and then it is everything is leading towards the super soul, understanding the super soul, and then going to Bhakti Yoga. And then middle 6 chapters on Krishna himself and his Bhakti. We saw devotional service. How finally Krishna says, one who makes me the supreme goal and is engaged in devotional service is very, very dear to me. And last 6 chapters are now Jnana leads to Bhakti. So these 6 chapters are very, very important. You know why? Because many times we are convinced about devotional service and we do it. But then, and Krishna also spoke of what are the qualities we should develop, right? And from verses 12 to 20 in the last chapter, he was describing how the devotee should be very equal in happiness and distress, equal to all, and very tolerant, humble. So many different qualities were mentioned. Who doesn't put others to distress? So we have to cultivate all this. Then only we can be considered a devotee. So this jnana allows us, gives us knowledge by which we can develop these qualities. Otherwise, very difficult. We may be practicing bhakti yoga, doing devotional service, but because we don't have understanding of the material energy and how and what is the truth about everything, how the super soul is working, how the individual soul, what is his role. If these 3 things are understood, as in this chapter, then it will lead to full bhakti and we can develop all those qualities. Krishna promises to deliver his devotees from the ocean of birth and death in 12.7. He says that. He says, I myself will deliver my pure devotee. So he gives knowledge now to elevate his devotees from the material world. Okay, next slide. Okay, 1 to 7 verses is Arjuna asks Krishna to explain 6 topics. We'll see what those topics are. And Krishna explains knowledge of the field of activities and the knower of the field. So here it will be constantly referred to the field and as the body and the knower of the field and so on. So these terms will make us understand exactly how it's working. Okay. Arjuna's questions. What is Prakriti or nature? And who is Purusha? Purusha means enjoyer. And Kshetra. What is Kshetra? Field of activities. And Kshetrajna, knower of the field. What is Jnanam or knowledge? And what is Gneyam? What is to be known? Object of knowledge. So this is the first verse. Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field and the knower of the field, and the knowledge and the object of knowledge. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, this body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. So the Kshetra refers to our body. It's compared to a field. Why? Because, a farmer, he sows seeds over there and he cultivates it. And he is the owner of that field. So he is the knower of the field. He possesses that and he is enjoying the benefits of the field. So that is why the body is, because body offers so much of, sense gratification and everything for the soul. So he is the field of activities. The body is called the field of activities, and Kshetrajna is the knower of the field. There's a difference. The body is not the soul. There is a knower of the field who is inside the body. And he's asking what is Jnanam, knowledge, and object of knowledge. Okay, next verse. Krishna replies, for the first question, he says, O sign of Bharata. Oh, let me just keep charged. Krishna says, O sign of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower of all bodies. Oh. In the first 1 to 2 itself, Krishna says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, this body, O son of Pritha, son of Kunti, is called the field. And one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. And in the third verse, he says, O sign of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. And to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. This is my opinion. So there are three things to be understood. First, kshetra or field, which is body, and that is given by prakriti, material nature. Kshetrajna is the knower of the body. Two knowers are there. Individual soul or Purusha, the so-called temporary enjoyer. Purusha means enjoyer. And so he is the temporary, in conditioned life, he's thinking he is enjoying. So he is called the Purusha. And the superknower is the Paramatma. He is not only knower of every body. He is there in all bodies. So he's knower of all the bodies. Or he's called the Ishvara, the controller of both Prakriti and Purusha. And he is actually the actual enjoyer. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the actual enjoyer. He's full of Ananda and bliss. But so these are the three things by knowing which we get. And Krishna says knowledge. What is knowledge? To know the three Brahmans, Prakriti, Purusha, and Ishvara. Why are they all called Brahmans? Because even Prakriti is eternal. It is an energy which is within Krishna, and whenever he wants, he will manifest it. So she is also eternal, and so knowledge is to know these three Brahmans. And who are the knowable or gneyam is the soul and the super soul. They are the ones we should know about. And in the purport, Krishna talks of two analogies, the farmer and the king. The difference between the soul and the super soul, he says, like a farmer is cultivating his field, and the king, he not only knows his palace, but he knows all the fields of all the people in his kingdom. So he's the owner of everything, whereas the farmer is only owner of his field. And not only that, the king is controlling everything. And he is and whereas the farmer, limitedly, he controls his thing. So the king is not only knows everything, he is controlling everything. And the farmer has to, and original proprietor is the king. The farmer is only a temporary proprietor. The king being he can be the permanent proprietor also, but the king is actually the proprietor. If he wants, he can take it away also, like that. So in the same way, everything has been given the original proprietor. King, the Lord is the owner of even master of all our bodies also. So that's the thing. That's the comparison. And not to confuse the painter, painting, and the easel as one. So Mayavadis, they, here it's clearly said what is Kshetra, who's a Kshetrajna, and Ishvara, three separate things. Whereas, so the painter, painting, and easel means here the painter is who? Krishna. And who's the painting? Us. And who's the easel? It is the, the board on which the painting takes place. So it's like the field. So the Mayavadis, they say everything is Advaita, all is one. So that means, first of all, Maya is, material energy is Maya, but again, as part of the Brahma, the painter and the painting is one. The soul and the super soul, there are no two. So that is not knowledge. Krishna says to knowledge is to know these three separate things. Okay, next. Yes, easel is the body. Yes. Okay, Kshetra and Kshetrajna. So now in fourth verse, Krishna promises to description of the Kshetra or body, how it is constituted, constituted, what is it made up of, the body, what changes it undergoes, and when is it produced, who is the knower of the field of activities, and what are his influences. Okay, so Krishna says, oh, now please hear my brief description of this field of activity and how it is constituted, what its stages are, when it's produced, who the knower of the field activities is, and what its influences are. Okay, next verse. Next slide. Okay, and then Krishna in the next verse, he says 13.5, that knowledge of the field of activities and of the knower of the activities, it is described by various sages in Vedic writings. It is especially presented in the Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as to cause and effect. So Krishna is actually the supreme authority in everything. All knowledge is coming from him, and yet he, just to set the proper standard, whenever you say something, you have to quote the previous sages and the scriptures in order to establish the knowledge. So he's saying that this knowledge which I'm going to describe is being given, I'm only giving a summary. In detail, it is given in so many Upanishads and all that. And so he says Sadhu Shastra and Guru's words to establish truth. Now, and he's also saying Vedanta Sutra especially talks about the difference between body and soul. So he's saying, but here we see, he's quoting, Prabhupada explains about Taittiriya Upanishad of the Yajurveda, speaks of 5 realizations of the absolute truth by the soul within the body. So the soul is actually perceiving, normally he's always perceiving Krishna in his pure state. But now, because, okay, we'll see the diagram. And of course, just go by what I'm saying, because they've written Ulta. I couldn't find a better picture than this, so I'm retaining it. But I will tell you what each level means. So this so the soul, when there is no covering of material body, it can see Krishna directly. But here in the body, that absolute truth is perceived of in different ways. So in the lowest, this Annamaya stage, that is the lowest, and that is in the bottom. I mean, it's in the at the bottom of the abdomen. So that realization of the absolute is when somebody is so attached to the body, he's thinking he's only the body, and there is no knowledge about external world and so on. He thinks all the external world is also inside my body. And who has this kind of consciousness? The baby, newborn, infant, just a few months. What does it do? It puts not only eatable things, material things also, all objects also, it keeps on putting everything into the mouth. That is because this is the Annamaya stage. Everything is for eating. And so it wants to experience everything by just putting into the mouth. And you have also animals like the jellyfish, which simply eats. And so also some amoebas and things like that, which are simply eating all the time. No other activity, just eat, eat, eat. So that is the Annamaya stage. And so the soul experiences the absolute truth in the form of food. Then when it goes to the next level, that is, on the abdomen, that is Pranamaya. Pranamaya is where all the activities take place. So he thinks, the realization that, yeah, my body is active, and then I can do work and, be very active. And the external world becomes a source of making the body happy. So this is what most of the people are involved in. Work very hard and get all kinds of fruits of your labor for your own happiness, enjoyment. So this is the Pranamaya stage. Then higher than that, in the middle, in the heart, is the Jnanamaya. Now Jnanamaya stage means then there is thinking, feeling and willing, not just physical activities for sense gratification. So the mind is more developed, and so you have thinking, feeling and willing and so on. And also you can theoretically understand that You're not the body, you're the soul. Then higher than that, and the throat is the Vijnanamaya. Vijnanamaya stage is when you actually realize that you are not this body. You are there in the body, but you can see that I'm not this body. So that actual realization is Vijnanamaya. And higher than that is, so when you're just realizing your soul, Brahman realization is Vijnanamaya. And on top is Anandamaya, which is when you realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When you understand there is Brahman and Parabrahman, or soul and super soul, then you are in bliss. Because all the bliss is coming from the Lord, who is always happy. And when the soul agrees to abide by the instructions of the Lord, then he also becomes very blissful, and that is perfection. In all these other stages, especially up to Jnanamaya, we're just trying to enjoy this world, thinking I'm the Purusha. And only when you go to the next stage, Vijnanamaya, you understand that I'm not the enjoyer of this body. But finally, when you understand the Paramatma also, that is. So this is the way the Taittiriya Upanishad explains 5 realizations of the absolute truth of the soul within the body. So we also, even if we are doing Bhakti Yoga, initially we may be very attached to material sense gratification, and then we more, we are more philosophical, we understand poetry, this, that, more thinking, feeling, willing, all those things. And then we actually realize I'm not this body. And finally, we also surrender completely to the Supreme Lord and act according to his instructions. So Anandamaya realizes he's the servant of the supremely blissful Lord. And this is different from the field of activities. That is, field of activities is the body. Living entity is perfect when dovetailing and enjoying with Anandamaya. So you can enjoy, but you have to dovetail with the Supreme. Then you can be blissful. Okay, next. Next slide. Brinda, can you go to the next screen? Next slide. Okay. Now, Krishna says, okay, field of activity also undergoes composed of 24 elements. That's what he says. That knowledge of the field of activities and of the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. So he also describes what is the field of activity. It is composed of 24 elements. And here we have the 24 tattvas, or in nature are, so Prakriti, which is 5 Jnanendriyas, 5 Karmendriyas. That means knowledge acquiring senses are the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears, and the skin. Okay, and then 5 Karmendriyas are the 2 hands, 2 legs, and the genitals. And 5 Tanmatras and Mahabhutas. Okay, that is Mahabhutas are the 5 elements, and touch the objects of senses are the Tanmatras. So together 20, and then we have Buddhi, Aham, Manas, that means intelligence, false ego, and mind, which are the subtle bodies, and total Prakriti, that means total material energy, or Mahat Tattva. So together they are the 24 elements, and this is what our body is made up of. And the gunas are all pervasive in all the tattvas, and hence not counted separately. So the gunas are what are controlling everything, but these are the 24 tattvas in composed. Our body is composed of these 24 elements, and this goes through 6 changes. And what are those changes? It takes birth, it grows, it stays like that for some time, then it reproduces, then it dwindles, and finally dies. So the body, or the field of activity, goes through these 6 changes, not the soul. Limited by the interactions of the body, mind, and karma. So how this field of activity is determined by our this thing, how the body interacts with the mind, and also karma. Karma also determines what interactions, because the body and the mind are interacting. And so according to that, the field is active, and also it is limited by the karma. Okay, next slide. So now Krishna also talks about interactions. 6 to 7, he says, the 5 great elements, that's what we saw: the false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms and convictions. All these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. So in the previous slide, we saw the field of activities, and because the body and the mind interact, the interactions of the field of activity. So what are those interactions of gross body? They produce desire, hatred, happiness, distress, and the aggregate. So what is the gross body? Sense gratification through the senses. We like to see something, or we like to hear something, or we don't like to taste something. So all these desire, hatred, happiness and distress, also everything that is congenial for our senses, we feel that is happiness, and distress is when we don't get that. The aggregate doesn't belong to this. The aggregate belongs to the 24 elements. I'm sorry about that. And interactions of the subtle body produce living symptoms of consciousness and conviction. So on the mental platform, the subtle body is where we are conscious, we are aware, and we have our convictions and all that. So these are the interactions which happen within the body because of the different things, because of the interactions of the field of activity. Okay, is it clear? Go to the next slide. So verses 8 to 19. 8 to 12, Krishna says the process of knowledge beginning with humility and culminating in the realization of the absolute truth. This is how we... Oh, when was my voice breaking? When I was explaining. It was not clear, is it? When I explained?
No, Mataji, it's clear, very clear.
Okay. Okay. So 8 to 12 talks about the process of knowledge beginning with humility and culminating in the realization of the absolute truth. And 13 to 19, the object of knowledge, that is Gneyam, or the soul and super soul, is discussed. Previously, they were explained as Kshetrajna, that is the soul and the super soul are the knowers of the body, but they are also the objects of knowledge. That is what we should learn, get knowledge about. Who's the Kshetra and the who. By understanding difference, Mr. Ashutosh, I will explain at the end, okay, whatever doubts you have. By understanding difference between body, soul, and super soul, one can transcend duality, realize his eternal subordination to Krishna, and attain the supreme destination. Okay, yeah, next slide. Next, okay. Process to obtain knowledge to transcend this field of activity. So this is very important. This is transcendental activity, because it is it is not a field of activity, it's not material, but this is the process by which we can overcome this material bondage. So 20 qualities to acquire knowledge, Krishna says, 8 to 12, 4 verses altogether. Of these, the most important of those, I'll read those qualities, but most important of those qualities is approaching a spiritual master, devotional service to the Lord. These are the most. Other qualities develop through these 2 processes. So if we are very sincere in our advancement, spiritual life, then we can develop these qualities. Humility of being subordinate to God required, and this is also important. It starts with humility. Because what is that humility of being subordinate to God required to get this knowledge? For very first, this thing, quality Krishna mentions is humility. Because we may be humble to, the world, we may treat everyone nicely and all that, but are we subordinate to God? That is real humility. Am I ready to do whatever God asks me? Or we think, no, I will decide what I want to do. So that is humility. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance. We'll see a little about each thing, but first I'll just read out the qualities. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge. And besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. So out of this, that's what, as we saw, the most important thing is first, approach a spiritual master, and then you start doing devotional service to the Lord with humility. First, so this knowledge will also help us to develop humility. We want to develop this, but how do we suddenly develop? Because as long as we think, I'm the controller, I'm the enjoyer, there's no question of humility. Only when we understand that the Lord is the controller, He's the actual enjoyer, and I'm supposed to be subordinate and do what He says, then only I'll be happy. So that is the first thing. Then pridelessness. Pride comes because of comparing, wanting to be the, when we compare, first of all, the comparison is with God. We want to be equal to Him, and that extends to other people also. Pride only comes when we start comparing with others. Suppose you don't compare, you're very happy, whatever you got, you wanted, then you should be happy. But we're not satisfied with that. No, what other persons are having, oh, they are having more than me, then you feel, oh, I should have the most, isn't it? So that is the reason. So pridelessness means, no, I'm a servant of Krishna. I'm very happy. Whatever Krishna gives me, I'll be very happy. It's between me and Krishna. Why I should sit and compare what others have? I'm happy. So that's the first thing. Non-violence. Non-violence doesn't mean only murdering people, that violence. Even if you allow people to harm themselves, we know that even in a murder case, or some violence is happening, and a person is present there, but he doesn't do anything. He allows the violence to happen. He is also implicated. Why didn't you do something about it? So the worst, for a devotee, also the violence is considered, that if people are suffering and they don't know the cause of their misery, and you keep quiet and you don't try to help them, or get spiritual knowledge and elevate their consciousness so that they can overcome this, then you're committing violence. So that is one thing. Then tolerance. Because there, in the material world, there'll be so many obstacles, so many criticisms and insults, whatever. And we saw how, in Prahlad, there was a great devotee. And even as a child, how much he had to face opposition, because he wanted to do devotional service to Krishna and his father, starting from his father. And because of him, the whole universe was against him. He was all alone. Even his mother could not help him, but he was tolerating it. We don't have to endure such great difficulties. He was thrown down a mountain cliff and, put under the elephant, so many things, torture. So that tolerance, that is the extreme tolerance. But we must be tolerant. And simplicity. We should be ready to speak the truth, even to anyone, even to the enemy, so that they can understand it very clearly. Approaching a bona fide spiritual master. Then cleanliness, both within and without. External cleanliness is through bath, and internal cleanliness by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, because the mind is purified when we chant. Then steadiness. We are not too much disturbed by external, too much happy also. We don't forget about worshipping Krishna, or, we keep our balance, that we know what is what. And okay, we are happy. We're not like stone, but it doesn't allow, we don't get swayed by that. Self-control, controlling the senses and the mind, very important. And so we have to be a little disciplined, because all the problems in our material life now we see is because of this lack of self-control. People are just eating whatever they feel like, whenever, however, all these things. But, and so, how the health, it has effect on the mind, everything. So self-control is very, very important, and that is easily achieved because we offer food to Krishna and eat. So automatically it becomes regulated. Only good products in the mode of goodness, and offered, done very clean in a way, and with proper consciousness, and offered with devotion to the Lord, and we eat it, then what happens? It has a very great impact on our mind and body. Health-wise also, physically also, and mind also becomes very peaceful, and spiritually also we advance. So self-control is very easily achieved by cooking prasadam, bhoga, and offering to Krishna. Renunciation of the objects of sense gratification. A devotee doesn't want too many things for sense gratification. He doesn't think that, oh, every weekend I should go for a film and go to the restaurant, and I must go for a vacation every month or whatever. Not, he's not addicted to all the sense gratification. Whatever is required. Yuktahara viharasya. In the yogi we saw that he has to be balanced in eating, sleeping, recreation, everything. And there are many Krishna conscious ways to have recreation, which is, and this is how it was. Vedic society, even 200 years ago, was like that. All recreation was very Krishna. Music, all classical music was all about glorifying Krishna. All dance is also depicting pastimes of Krishna. Any drama also about Krishna. So that is very natural. That is our culture. So in that way, we become a self-control. Renunciation of the object. Yeah, that's what we don't gratify. An absence of false ego, because devotee is based on real ego. False ego means there is an ego. It doesn't mean we don't have an ego. The real ego is, I'm a soul and I'm surrendered to Krishna. So that is the devotee's realization. Perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. We know that all these things are actually very disturbing. It's not birth. Why is it? Birth is a nice event, right? We wait for the birth of children. But for the child itself, it's a painful experience. First of all, to be inside the womb like that for 10 months and then coming out also big. It's a very, very difficult, moment. So then we have, death is also a very painful experience. Old age and disease, we know. So we should see that this is what is material life, and not become too attached to this material world. Detachment. Detachment is the same as attachment to Krishna. So devotees, because he's very attached to Krishna, automatically he becomes detached to material world. Freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest. It doesn't mean that we don't have any affection for them, or we don't spend time with them. It means that if the best way we do is we make the family members also, come together, we sing Kirtan together, we read Bhagavad Gita together, then it's progressive. So it is not a kind of an obstacle in our spiritual life. It only means that if there is some obstacle in our spiritual progress, then we must give more priority. Somehow we should not allow that to come in the way of our spiritual progress. Even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events. Because material life means sometimes happy, sometimes sad. So we should learn to tolerate. Constant and unalloyed devotion to me. That is the fundamental thing, because Krishna is always, that is the nature of the soul also, always devoted to Krishna. It is not something artificially that we have to induce ourselves. Their soul is automatically attracted to and devoted to Krishna. Aspiring to live in a solitary place means that they're not attached to all the time, interacting, social interaction. Normally, materialistic people want social life all the time. Weekend means complete social life, or even be as much as possible, or of course, all the time on the internet and WhatsApp and all that we want. But the test of advancement of a person, devotee, is if he needs to be, he's very happy even being alone. It doesn't mean that unless somebody is there in the room, I will go crazy, right? Now, that is what happens all the time if you're interacting. Now, during the pandemic, some people have really gone crazy because they have to stay inside the house, even though through social media they are interacting, but still very restless. They have to go and talk, see them, and talk to them, and do something. So that's so gradually what happens is, because the Paramatma is always there. Actually, I got this lesson in many years ago when my Guru Maharaj had come to our place in the Middle East, and then he was leaving to Dubai, and that time there was nobody to accompany him, and I was telling him, "Oh, you're going alone," and all the way, and he said, "I'm never alone." And that was a very sublime and a big thing. I'm never alone. And I realized what he's trying to tell me. He's trying to put some sense in my head. Don't think the Paramatma is there with me. And so, like that, so the devotee doesn't feel he's alone. He's always with the Paramatma. He never becomes bored, which is not true if you're not realized. If you're not a devotee, you become very bored quickly. What to do? I need some entertainment, something to do. But a devotee, what does he do if nobody's there? Nothing to do, no television, nothing. Anyway, they are not dependent on television. But I'm saying no communication. He's got the best communication. Take your beads and start chanting. You're communicating with the Paramatma. So, aspiring to a detachment from the general mass of people. Why? Because mass of people, it's just talking about all material things. So that is why he's not, he avoids, he wants to be but of course, devotee is very concerned. He goes where mass of people are there, devotee who are preachers. They want to give this message to others. So he doesn't avoid people, the devotee preachers. He only doesn't want to do the same activities, materialistic activities, but he's very concerned that they should also get. So for preaching, he goes, but otherwise he's detached, accepting the importance of self-realization. So important. We should not get deviated. There is so much, because it's like in today's world, there is constant bombardment of how to gratify your senses. And unless you're determined, no, my goal is self-realization, you can easily get sucked into that and think that, oh, so what? Let me first enjoy, then I'll come to this. But you'll never get Krishna like that. You have to be determined that what is my goal in life? And philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these are declared to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance, Krishna is saying. Okay, next slide. So Krishna is saying in 13.13 and 14, I shall now explain the noble, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So after describing what is the material field made up of, and then he talked about the process of coming out of it, now he's talking about Gneyam, the noble. And what is the noble? It is the soul and the super soul, knowing which you will go beyond the cause and effect of this material world. And he also says, everywhere is hands and legs, his eyes, head and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the super soul exists, pervading everything. So, understanding the noble, the soul and the super soul can make us taste nectar of life. So then in the 14th, so that's what he's saying. Knowing which you shall taste the eternal. So the eternal is a very nice feeling to have. We are trying to taste the eternal by looking for it in material objects, material relationships. And we are so disappointed because we want that same kind of love, that same kind of sincerity, same kind of dependence. We want that. We're looking for that, but we don't find that much. And even if we find to some extent satisfying relationships, it's not permanent. So that's why, but once actually the love that we are looking for in the outside world is a love of the super soul which we are looking for. But if you love the super soul, it's not that you stop loving others, but you cannot really love others unless you love the super soul, because then you feel completely satisfied and you don't have any expectations, people. And then it's a wonderful thing, because all misery happens in relationships because of expectations. Why you didn't do this to me? Why you didn't call me up? Why you didn't bring me a gift? We have so many expectations, and we think that is an expression of love. And half the time goes in quarreling about why you didn't do this for me, do that for me, you don't love me, all these things. Because we put unnecessary burden on people. They are not the super soul. Only the super soul, and we have such an intimate this thing always. We miss also people we love all the time. You're going away somewhere now. You never give me time. All these things. But with the Paramatma, always there's not a moment where he's away from us. So we are completely satisfied. Then we don't make unnecessary demands on other people, and we can be just having good time with them. We taste them, because we are not expecting. The super soul is, and then he says, everywhere are his hands and legs. Why does he say that? It's not that he's become impersonal. It means that he has all the people all around, all the living entities. He's permeated everyone. And so everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads and faces. And he has ears everywhere. That is all the living entities, this thing. Because he's part of all the bodies. And this way the super soul exists, pervading everything. And the super soul is all pervading. He can accept he can accept anything from a distant place. His senses are spread everywhere, right? Because also another this thing is, Krishna, we know he's far away somewhere in the spiritual world, but he's also near. You offer some food, he accepts. He's far away and is also near. In one place and yet omnipotent. He is there, and yet from there only he knows everything. What is happening, he has his energies, everything he can control. But individual soul cannot do this. His senses are localized. So this is the difference between Atma and Paramatma. We cannot, the Brahma, anyone in their proper this thing will never mistake the two to be one. God is God, we are small. We only know about our bodies. But you see the impersonalists, they mistake. They don't say there is Atma and Paramatma. They say that there is all only one. The Atma is the Paramatma also. So that is the mistake. Okay, next. Qualities of the super soul. In 13.15, he says, the super soul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time is the master of all the modes of material nature. So he is the original, see contradictions. He is the original source of all senses. And he's called Rishikesha because he's control. Rishika means senses and Isha means controller. So he's the controller of our senses, but he's without material senses. He has spiritual senses, but not material senses. Then he maintains all living entities, and yet he is unattached, right? He is supplying everything for us, but he is not interested in, enjoying all these material things. Master of the modes of nature, and yet he is not under the modes of material nature. He transcends that. He's not affected by it at all. We cannot see his form due to materially contaminated senses. right? Actually, we should be constantly able to see him in our original form, but now these material senses are blocking that. Hence, impersonalists still materially affected cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is why they don't understand, because they're covered with these senses, especially their mind. And so they speculate and cannot see the Lord. Okay, next verse, slide. Then in 13.16, 17, and 18, he further describes the qualities. Lord exists inside and outside of all living beings, moving and unmoving. That we know. He is inside as the Paramatma, and he's outside also, outside us. And he's subtle. He's subtle beyond the power of the material senses to see or know. So through the senses we cannot understand, see or know Krishna. We cannot see with our material eyes. Or the only thing is, one good thing is, when we chant Hare Krishna mantra, our senses, our ears can hear that vibration. That is why it is so important, mantra. Because we are able to experience Krishna in a sound vibration. Other than that, we cannot, experience. Senses cannot see or know Krishna. Although far away, he is also near to all. Although divided among all beings, but while chanting, we are only hearing our voice, but the name is Krishna's. And so the name is Krishna himself, even though it's our voice. Although far away, he is near to all, and although divided among all beings, he is situated as one. Example of the sun. So it doesn't mean because he's put in, so many people's hearts, everybody's hearts is there, so he's become divided. So that means it's not one person. There are so many Krishnas. Your Krishna, my Krishna is Krishna. Not like that. He is one person only. Same Paramatma in your heart is also in my heart also. It's not that you have a different Paramatma and I have a different Paramatma. You'll get different kind of instructions which are different, goal, and my Paramatma thinks differently. No, he's one person only. And the comparison of the sun is, the sun is on the head, and wherever you go, you find the sun is above me. Sun, so that is how. Although he is the maintainer of all, he devours also. And as time. And at creation, he develops all from the original state. So, though he's maintaining, he's also destroying. Like, for example, now he says, time am I, because when Arjuna asks in the 11th chapter, who are you? What is your goal? He said, I am time. I've come to destroy everyone except you, the Pandavas. So he also does that. And during creation, he wakes up everyone from the original state, in the dormant state they are, and then he again makes them, creates their bodies and so on. Okay, yeah, go to the next slide. Then in 13.19, he describes, no, this is 13.18, yeah, and then 19. Okay, 13.18, he says, the Lord's effulgence lights the spiritual worlds. So the effulgence is all coming from him, from his body. And it gives light to the sun and the moon for illuminating the material world. So where is the source of all this light of the sun? It is coming from the Brahmajyoti of the Lord. And he is the knowledge, object of, and the goal of knowledge. So all knowledge comes from him only. And he is the object of knowledge. That means all that knowledge is about him. And he is only the goal of all knowledge also. Impersonalists think that ultimately all three become one. What is that? That is, they are thinking that is Atma. Atma is the knowledge, the object of, and the goal. Everything is just Aham Brahmasmi. So then he's seated in everyone's heart. He's describing this. all this. Is knowledge, and is the goal. He is situated in everyone's heart. So then, the 19th verse, he says, only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and attain to his nature. So this is, a relationship between the soul and God. And the devotee is, all the time he's trying to meditate on the Lord and serve him all the time. So he can understand this knowledge thoroughly, because the jnanis, karmis, and yogis, they're struggling to understand by controlling the senses and all that. And only when you come finally to this relationship of surrendering to him and engaging in his service, then Krishna gives complete understanding. Okay, next. Okay, verses 20 to 26, understanding the relationship between Purusha, soul and super soul, and material nature. Understanding this leads to liberation from birth in the material world. Other methods of understanding the super soul, Jnana, Ashtanga, and Karma Yogas. Okay, next. Okay. Prakriti and Purusha relationship. Material nature and the Purusha. So both Prakriti and Purusha are eternal. We already saw that they are energies of the Lord and they are eternal. But Prakriti undergoes constant changes. Purusha does not. Out of ignorance, the living entity identifies with changes of the body. So the body is undergoing changes and we think we are undergoing the changes. We are not Prakriti, we are Purusha. So the soul does not undergo any change. The soul is, we think we are getting older. No, the soul is not at all getting older. It's always ever fresh. But out of ignorance, we are thinking, oh, I'm getting old. People become very depressed, through old age, because they think now, what is there to look forward to? I'm old. And many people, how much the industry to make yourself look young is so prominent in the Western countries, because they have no clue that they are not aging. The soul is never aging. Then that's why in India they think, okay, now my body has become aged. Okay, let me think. My soul is eternal, so let me think of my eternal self. They're not disturbed. They're not trying to put more creams and trying to do facelifting and trying to look young. So that's the thing. And conditioned by material nature due to rebellious desires. So why are we thinking we are the body? Because of rebellious desires. We don't want to do what Krishna wants us. We want something separate from what he's saying. So we are conditioned by material nature. Given chance again and again to act in the material world and prepared to enter the spiritual world. So this is the purpose of our birth in the material world. We are constantly given chance. Okay, you do whatever you want and then come slowly get purified and go back to the spiritual world. Not necessary to know we came in contact, how we came in contact with the material nature, because this is a constant problem. Oh, if I'm a soul and I'm pure, how did I come in contact with this material nature? Right? We don't have answers to that, because the Lord knows how and why it happened. Now it's enough. I fell into this ocean, I'm drowning. I'm not constantly asking, how did I fall into the ocean? How it happened? How was I so careless? It's not possible. No. We are just thinking somebody is bringing a boat and then we hop into that and first take me to the shore, then I'll ask you what happened, how I fell off. Right? So that's what. 30.20. Okay, that's what. The material nature and the living entities should be understood to be beginningless. Their transformations and modes of matter are products of material nature. So the material, all the transformations that happen in the body and the modes of matter are products of material nature. It's not of the soul. Okay, yes. Next. Then nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects. Materially, whatever happens to us, nature is the reason, cause. But living entity responsible for his sufferings and enjoyments. So we see immediate effects. Whatever is happening is because of the modes of material nature. But we cannot say, then I'm not responsible. No, we are responsible for our suffering and enjoyment. Because according to karma and desires, material nature places living entities in different material bodies for enjoyment and suffering. So we are the one who desire, and we are the one who acts according to which our karmas determined. Places we receive different bodies and situations. Living entity comes under the control of material nature and laws. So that is the law of karma, all happening under the sanction of the actual Purusha, the super soul. So he's also there, and he's sanctioning material energy to do all this because he's aware of everything. So though nature is the cause of the entire material manifestation, living entity causes his own happiness and distress. So we'll see how not to be a product of that. How to overcome that. So 13.21, yeah, the same thing. Next slide. Prakriti and Purusha relationship further. Living entity associates with material nature and trying to enjoy the three modes of material nature. Imagines himself to be a Purusha or enjoyer, although Krishna is only Purusha or enjoyer. Trying to exploit material energy. So because he's identifying with the body and he's trying to enjoy. What is wrong? Everybody, why can't we enjoy? We may have the thing, and so he exploits material energy so that he can enjoy. So what happens? Practically, he becomes matter, and he thinks, I am this matter, I am this body, and experiences change, birth, death, old age, disease, although he's changeless. So that itself should show the body is not actually, soul is not actually enjoying. It is the body which is undergoing all these things, thinking he is to enjoy. The senses are demanding things. I want only this quality of food. I want this kind of bedding. I want this kind of, rooms and how they should be furnished for my eyes. So this body is the enjoyer. And we are thinking we are this body, and we think we are the enjoyer. But for the Lord, he has spiritual body and he is enjoying. Everything is his energy ultimately. So he is the actual enjoyer. Yeah, next. The real Purusha or enjoyer, super soul, is the transcendental enjoyer. He is the Lord and the supreme proprietor, overseer and permitter. As the super soul, he has no interest actually in this material sense gratification. He is not enjoying through our body. He's not come here so that, he thinks, oh, I'll also enjoy. No, he has no enjoyment. He's a spiritual body, but he's a proprietor and he's the overseer and permitter. He's looking at what we are doing and he is a witness to everything, and he's permitting whatever we desire, material energy, he permits so that we can enjoy whatever according to our desires. Living entity is the marginal energy of the Lord, but trying to dominate nature. So marginal energy means we are both spiritual and material. If we identify with our body, we become material. If we identify with the Lord, then we become spiritual. So when we are identifying with the material nature, we are trying to dominate over nature. So in material energy, he defies the Lord and suffers, being a dominant. We're so used to dominating. I want like this. I desire this. So we're so used to, through our mind also, we're all the time making plans for our enjoyment. But Lord instructs from within as super soul and without through the Bhagavad Gita, trying to elevate us. Don't try to dominate. Try to serve me. So you don't have to run away anywhere. Where will you run away? Because wherever you go, your mind and senses also will go. You go to the go and sit in the forest also, your mind and body is there. Mind will demand, oh, it's so boring. And no entertainment. Oh, I feel like eating. Oh, what nice food I used to eat. All these things will come up. So that is not the solution. The solution is to identify, recognize that we have a Paramatma, and we listen, we try to connect with him, and he instructs from within as the super soul and without through the Bhagavad Gita. And okay, we'll also see how to connect. with the Paramatma. Next. 13.23, this verse is important. Yet in this body there is an other, a transcendental enjoyer, who's the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the Supersoul. Okay. Result of understanding this, one who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth again, regardless of his present position. So that is why it's so important. Once we understand this knowledge that, who I am, I'm different from this body, how the body is just doing something or the other, and I'm identifying with the body. And then there is the Paramatma also inside my body. Being aware of this Paramatma itself will liberate us. Okay, next. Now it's all about the different processes to understand Supersoul. So there are other processes apart from what we talked about. I mean, Krishna gave the process of cultivating all those, approaching a spiritual master and all that, and then from humility, all those 20 points we saw. But there are others like Karma Yogis, Jnana Yogis, Ashtanga Yogis. They also have their own process. They're all doing things only to understand the Supersoul. But atheists, agnostics, skeptics, and monists are beyond spiritual understanding. They cannot understand Paramatma at all. The atheists think there is no God, and agnostics are skeptical. I don't know, I'm not sure. So monists are, they cannot understand Paramatma because all the time they're saying there is only Brahman. Okay, next. And Bhakti Yogis are the best. Yes. Others begin to worship the Supreme on hearing about him. That is Mother 25 and 26. Some, Krishna says, again there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. So this is very relevant for modern society, because we're not following any of this jnana, karma, yoga, nothing. But so we can worship the Supreme on hearing about him, and by hearing the Hare Krishna mantra, and then this will help us to transcend material life and go back to Godhead. Okay? Yes, next slide. Verses 27 to 35. How to see the difference between the body, its owner, and the Supersoul. Then can recognize the process of liberation and attain the supreme goal. Yes. Next slide. How to distinguish the Kshetra and the Kshetrajna. Very important. Because we should understand, I'm not this body. Everything in existence, both moving and non-moving, a combination of Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Not only our human bodies, all the animals you see, everything is a combination of Kshetra and Kshetrajna. One who sees the eternal Atma and Paramatma in every being goes beyond the influence of Maya. So this is what we should train ourselves to see. How everybody is acting. You know, it is the modes of material energy, but beyond that, everybody is actually an Atma. He is not the body. And the Paramatma is making him, allowing him to do these things. By seeing that, you will not be disturbed. Does not degrade himself by his mind, is not disturbed or envious. So once you understand the Paramatma is there controlling everything, and then we don't become disturbed. Okay, he's controlling, he's my best friend. So whatever he does, it'll be good for me. Maybe he is purifying me. And he's not envious. Okay, he takes care of himself, he protects, but he doesn't want to harm anyone, because he knows that, it is all happening under Paramatma's control. And must act properly and see the super soul, the ultimate sanctioning authority present in all beings. So we must see how Paramatma is acting through in all, is present everywhere. Otherwise, the mind will tell us all negative things. Maybe this person is doing that and this. So many things. We cook up, something happens and we build a big story around it. And that keeps haunting us like anything. Everything is built on stories, on our mind. Mind is very creative. It comes up with a lot of stories. So we should detach from that kind of storytelling, and we see the Paramatma, the ultimate sanctioning authority present in all beings. So everybody's got a Paramatma. Then you will see them differently. Must see that the soul does nothing even though responsible for his sufferings and enjoyments. So all activities are performed by the body created by material nature will make us humble. I'm not this body will make us humble. Why I am so proud? Okay, somebody may be very beautiful, very talented. And then if they identify the body, they become very proud. Right? They are so, I mean, they think, oh, others who are, and the white skin people think, oh, dark skin is not so good. And they become very proud and they try to harass them. What is that? That is nonsense. Because nobody is the body, it's all the soul. Then why you should think this body is better, and then you become proud and arrogant and harass others? Okay. Yes. Okay, 28, 29. One who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who understands that neither the soul nor the super soul within the destructible body is ever destroyed, actually sees. One who sees super soul equally present everywhere in every living being does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus he approaches the transcendental destination. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. So there is no question of all this envy and feeling, envious about somebody else's something that the body does. You think, okay, this is something temporary. The soul is all of us are same. So we don't get this thing. Or if somebody engages in some wrong activities also, we don't get disturbed. Okay, we should. It's not that we shouldn't punish people or like that, but we are not disturbed. We only do the right thing. Why? According to how the Paramatma wants. That's it. Okay, next. Then sees different individuals as Kshetrajna, not as Kshetras. What is Kshetrajna? Is the Atma, and Kshetras are the body. So you have to see individuals as the soul and not as their body. Self is outside all bodily activities, does not mix with anything, just like the sky. So the sky is there, and so many things, material things are there around it, but it never mixes with anything. All the planets and sun, moon, stars, so many things, but it does not mix with anything. Like that, the soul is within the body, but it does not mix with the body. Consciousness is the symptom of the soul, like the sun illuminating the universe. So because of the sun only, there's brightness. And so the consciousness, how do you know you have a soul? I cannot see the soul, you may say, but then the symptom of the soul is that you have consciousness. You can sense sensation, physical sensation also is a symptom of consciousness. And so that's why you know you are the soul. Situated in Brahman vision, does not mix with the body. And so the Brahman vision means he realizes he's not the body, he's the soul, and he doesn't mix with the body, but he's conscious of only one body. Within his body, he understands that I'm not the body and the soul. And super soul, conscious of all bodies and everyone's friend. So this is the three distinguishing things which will really make our life super. If you can just distinguish between these two things, always when things happen, don't let your mind overtake you and come up with all kinds of disturbing thoughts. Just segregate it. No, this is just a field of interaction. The body, mind, it's interacting and giving me all these thoughts. Let me become calm. Let me come to this, my Atma platform. How do you do? Just chant Hare Krishna. Then you can detach yourself from your mind and come to the spiritual platform. And then you pray to the Lord, because you're praying to him. He will give all directions. So how do you distinguish whether it's your mind or the Paramatma? Of course, we have to check it out with other devotees, especially more advanced devotees, the Guru and all that. Is it correct? Is it my mind or it's Paramatma? That we should check. But for small minor things, everything you can't ask people. So if you're very peaceful and you're getting, in a mode of goodness, and very nicely you get some thoughts and ideas and all that, that is Paramatma. The minute you're agitated and disturbed and walking up and down and angry and all that, that's not coming from the Paramatma for sure. So that's how you can distinguish. Yes, next slide. So that is why we should never talk to people when we are angry. Because for sure we'll talk all nonsense and the anger will just keep on escalating. So when you are angry, just withdraw, go and quietly chant, bring your calm down and understand this is only the body and the mind interactions. Let me calm down and come to my spiritual platform. Then I can think things very clearly. And even if I have to correct someone, in that platform, when you even scold someone and tell them what you did is nonsense, or even children, sometimes they need some little punishment, doses of medicine they require sometimes, you can do it and it will have effect. But if you do it with anger, because that is out of, you are not controlled, you're just letting out anger and just hitting the child, that will not have any effect. You will feel miserable and the child also will feel miserable and no good outcome will come out of it. So that is why it's so important that we understand this distinction. The body is doing something, the mind is doing something. I'm not going to be affected by it. I'm going to bring myself to my real position, the soul, and then in communion with the Paramatma, whatever we do will be perfect. So how do we attain this? By accepting a spiritual master and hearing submissively from him, one can understand how this material manifestation is a combination of the soul, material elements under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. One can thus be transferred to the spiritual world. So this is very important. And hearing submissively and then taking shelter of him, then all this knowledge by reading the Bhagavad Gita and by doing all practical devotional services, it will become a part of us. So it takes, but we can keep trying. It's a process. He says process of knowledge. He just didn't say knowledge and you'll be liberated. Process of knowledge. So we have to keep on cultivating. Yes, next. So the verse for this 13.23 about the Paramatma. Upadrishta anumanta cha bharta bhokta maheshwara paramatmeti chapi yukto dehesmin purusha para upadrishtanumanta cha bharta bhokta maheshwara paramatmeti chapi ukto dehesmin purusha para upadrishtanumanta cha bharta bhokta maheshwara paramatmeti chapi ukto dehesmin purusha para. Yet in this body there is an other, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the super soul. Okay, next slide. Okay, this beautiful song, I'll just read it out. There's no time for singing. Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago. This is written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of our Acharyas. It is about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is telling us, Jeev Jago, Ora Chanda Bole. Jeev Jago, wake up soul. I'll read out the translation also. Kota Nidra Jao Maya Pisha Chira Kole. Bajibo Bolia Eshe Bajiba Bolia Eshe Samsara Bhitare. Okay, I will go verse by verse. Jeev Jago, Gora Chanda Bole, Kota Nidra Jao Maya, Pishachira Kole. Lord Gauranga is calling, wake up sleeping souls, wake up sleeping souls. How long will you sleep in the lap of the witch called Maya? Bajibo Boliya Eshe Samsara Bitare Bhuliya Rohile Tumi Avidya Rabare. You've forgotten the way of devotional service and are lost in the world of birth and death, avidya, because of ignorance. Tomare loite ami hoinu avatara ami bina bandhu ara ke ache tumara. I have descended just to save you. Other than myself, you have no friend in this world. Enechi aushadi maya nashi barolagi Hari Nama Maha Mantra Lao Tumi Magi. I have brought the medicine that will wipe out the disease of illusion from which you are suffering. Take this Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bhakti Vinodha Prabhu Charane Pariya. Say Hari Nama Mantra Loi Lo Magiya. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura says, I fall at the Lord's lotus feet, having taken this Maha Mantra. Okay. Next slide. That's it. I didn't do the summary, I think. Oh, yeah. All right. Summary today, I'm sorry, but I hope you have, it's very clear. Arjuna's questions, about 6 questions about Kshetra, Kshetrajna, and things like that. I mean, Gniya, knowledge, object of knowledge, and everything. And Krishna's descriptions, what is Kshetra, Kshetrajna, then who is the Paramatma, relationship between the knower of the body and material nature, and finally all the qualities of the super soul. So I hope it is clear. Any questions? Let me see what questions we have. But while chant, okay, that's please explain humility once. Okay, humility means understanding that the Lord is very great and I'm very small and I'm part of Him and I'm meant to serve Him. That is humility. Otherwise, we are thinking that the Lord should serve me. He has everything, what He needs, I need. So let Him keep giving me things. That is our relationship with Him now, right? But humility means we understand that Krishna is the enjoyer, the proprietor of everything, and I'm a part of Him. And I will be happy only if I do what He tells me. That is humility, subordination to Him. Yes, important. Yes, I'll send the important verses recorded so that you can easily this thing. Okay. How to identify what He is telling us? Who? Paramatma. Is it? Nupur, you wanted to ask how to identify what He is telling us? Can we get presentation? Yes, of course, I can share it with you. I will, I don't know, but how do I share it? This presentation you want? Maybe I can send it, right? Okay, you want it today? Or I'll figure out how, can I send, somebody, Brinda can send it, right? In the group, Brinda?
Yeah, I think so, Mataji. I think we can.
Okay, otherwise figure out and send it tomorrow.
Yeah, Mother, if we can get their email ID, then we can send it.
Okay.
Just ping us your email ID, whoever wants, then we can send you.
Okay.
It's a group, right?
Yes, important verses I will be sending, audio I will share so that you can hear that. And okay, then what is this question? How to identify what He is telling us? You mean the Paramatma? Is that what? Nupur is there? She's not here? Okay.
I think Nupur Mataji, how to identify what He is telling.
Yes, Paramatma. Yes, she's saying.
Yes, but how to identify that this is what Paramatma is asking us to do, this is what He's not asking us to do.
So, See, the one we have to pray. So sometimes it may not be, even after chanting, if our mind is disturbed, because we are attached, right? And because of that, we cannot see things very clearly. Sometimes we are not objective. So that's why it is good to consult with devotees, because others, can see it more clearly, especially those who are little advanced in devotional service, they can see more clearly, and because of experience. So that's why you consult. Okay, then for major things, you should consult. Otherwise, you might think, oh, Paramatma is telling me. You can always say, Paramatma told me to rob the bank. No, Paramatma will never say such things, right? So, of course, Paramatma only gives intelligence to the robber also. How to rob the bank is also given by Paramatma. That is also, he only does. But he never told the criminal, go and rob the bank, because he knows that the criminal wants to do it. Then the intelligence is supplied by the Lord. So for us, because we are not asking the Lord, please tell me how to harm others, but we want to do the right things, right? And so you see, we know, we have experience of Paramatma in the form of conscience. Many times, we want to do something bad, and then, we are protected, we feel guilty, and we say, no, I shouldn't do this. That is Paramatma. Yeah, so by consulting devotees, we can find out what's the right thing to do. Yes. And by reading Bhagavad Gita, so by chanting Hare Krishna, by reading Bhagavad Gita, you are also getting purified, and by following the instructions of the Guru Parampara, what happens is you are also getting closer to the Paramatma, because you're acting according to what Paramatma wants, by listening to other devotees. Then slowly you become closer to Paramatma. So this is the way. By consulting devotees, we can find out, yes, correct. We can find out what the Paramatma wants. Okay. Yes, Nupur, one more question. What is that?
Mataji, Maheshwar have always identified with Shiva, but here we see that Maheshwar is Paramatma, who is Lord Krishna. So this is where I am confused, whether Maheshwar is Lord Shiva or Lord Krishna, or how is it?
So actually, Ishwar name goes to Shiva because he's the Ishwar of this material world. See, you should know, there's no confusion, because Shiva is actually an expansion. Sadashiva in the spiritual world, he is an expansion of Krishna as Mahavishnu. So, as Vishnu. But in the material world, he takes charge of the ignorance, and so he's slightly this thing. So Shiva Tattva is separate from Vishnu Tattva. And so you should understand that Shiva is also when people are worshipping him, his idea is to purify them so that they can surrender to Krishna. That is Shiva's. You should find out what is Shiva's motive. He is not competing with Krishna and saying, okay, now Krishna, okay, everyone is worshipping you, now I also want to be worshipped. That is not the mood. They have no competition at all. It is we who, without understanding, we think, oh, your God is Shiva, my God is Vishnu, and then we fight, oh no. Or I know you're not in that mood. You're just wanting to know what is the truth. Yes, the truth is Krishna has shown in the Vishwarupa that all these forms are within him. And these devatas, if you suppose you're attached to worship, are you attached to worshipping Shiva because of practice? I mean,
no, Mataji, I worship all the God actually. But this particularly, sometimes I get confused between Vishnu and Shiva and Paramatma. So yet I am not clear.
Oh, that Paramatma is Krishna only. He is clearly saying the Bhagavad Gita, no? Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Krishna, and he is saying, I am the Paramatma.
So then where does Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva figure out, Mataji?
See, Brahma, Vishnu, okay, those three Gunavataras, yes, they are for this thing, okay, maintaining material world. Brahma is a Jiva Tattva. is like us. Anyone who does a lot of penance, like 100 births, if you've done Varnashrama perfectly, you can become a Brahma. So that is a position acquired through some pious activities. Shiva is not like that. Shiva is Vishnu himself, who has taken some qualities of the material world in order to be here and promote us. So that is why is a separate category, the Shiva in the material world. But in the spiritual world, in Kailas and all, Sada Shiva, he's eternal. He's like Vishnu Tattva, but still he's a devotee of Krishna. He's only an expansion of Krishna. The original personality of Godhead is Krishna. And he is shown in the Vishwarupa, Brahma, Shiva, everybody is there in his body. So if you worship Krishna, you're satisfying all of them. And we don't show disrespect to anybody. We in fact glorify them because they're all very dear to Krishna. Shiva is very, very dear to Krishna. So we must respect him like that and beg for his blessings. We can offer obeisances to him, glorify him. And because Shiva is Ashutosh, who's easily satisfied, we can beg him, please help me to develop, my devotional service. Please give me detachment. Shiva is so detached, no? He's always meditating. So you can pray to him. Please, I am so attached. I'm so, this thing, please help me. And one other very important thing is Shiva, because he's in charge of the mode of ignorance, he also, he controls false ego. So if you want to overcome false ego, then you can pray to him and say, oh Lord Shiva, please help me overcome my false ego. And he'll help. So Devatas, you can request them for helping so that you can achieve Krishna, and they'll be very, very happy to do that because they are great devotees. Which devotee will say, don't worship Krishna, worship me? Will any devotee, proper devotee, say like that? Never. Then he's not a devotee. They don't want to be worshipped. Devotees want that Lord should be worshipped. And Shiva being the topmost devotee, Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu, he is the best of devotees. So he's so happy if we worship Krishna. So that way there is no contradiction. Okay.
Okay, Mataji. Okay, yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. So any other one more question, is it? Is there Brahma Tattva also? No, Brahma Tattva is Jiva Tattva. That is Jivas, like us. Brahma is a position. And anyone can be elevated to a Brahma. And it is mentioned that if somebody has been a Brahma for 100 times, then he can become a Rudra. So Rudra is even more elevated. That is Shiva's expansions. Okay. So these are all positions. Shiva is not a position, but Rudras are. Okay. Okay. Right. Okay, I will stop now.
Recording stop, Jana.
We will chant Mataji. It's for the well-being of all the devotees.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. This knowledge of the material energy is very important, and it's Hare Krishna. Okay. Then with Pranam. Hari Bol. We'll leave now.